This thing is really hot. Mega Man, the blue-balled bomber. For years, Nintendo fans and later PlayStation would enjoy his fun-as-hell gameplay and hard-as-shit difficulty. If you wanted something a bit more mature and fast-paced, you had the X games, which was Mega Man with a side of edge. While most fans will tell you this is where they got their start with the series and it's what most people think of when they hear Mega Man, me personally, I never experienced them until, well, a couple months ago when I made videos about them. I was introduced to Mega Man through the Game Boy Advance games, the side-scrolling action I got from the Zero games, and hating my life decisions I got from Mega Man and Bass. But my main introduction to the series proper was with the Mega Man Battle Network games. Battle Network was the biggest departure from the usual Mega Mans. Even in Legends, the core gameplay was still running, jumping, and shooting, dying. Mega Man Battle Network was instead an RPG, a very big departure from what Capcom fans were used to, depending on who you ask. Battle Network takes place where else in the year 20XX, where technology has become so advanced everything is everything. Mega Man and the other, men are present, but instead of being robots, they are now digital programs known as NetNavis, stored in devices known as personal terminals, or PETs for short. They're pretty much sentient Tamagotchis, or I guess they're more like thinking Siris or Alexas, because they do everything. Keep your schedule, deliver mail, engage in Mortal Kombat. Navis can't act alone, they need humans to operate them. Most of them are brand new characters, others are this universe's take on the few human characters in Mega Man. Our protagonist is Lan Hikari, Mega Man's operator. The Mega Man in this series is often referred to as Megaman.exe, I'm just gonna call him Mega Man. Lan's friends also have familiar characters from other Mega Man series. Mail, the girl and love interest, operates Roll. Dex, the sort of best friend and sort of rival, operates Gutsman. And Yai, the stereotypical spoiled rich girl, uses Glide. The last two, some hardcore Mega Man fans will notice, are based on characters from Mega Man Legends. Yeah, this series will often reference other games in the franchise multiple ways, either through little nods in the world, extra bosses, or they're actually integrated into the story in some way. Yai and Glide aren't the only Legends references, though. You'll see more sprinkled throughout the games, as many of the people who worked on Legends also worked on Battle Network. Glad to see the best role design again. This is not up for debate. Mega Man Battle Network is definitely the most expansive series in the Mega Man franchise. Not only are there the video games, but it also has a manga series as well as an anime series that has 5 seasons and a film. I'm just going to stick with the games here. I'm not going to get into the anime and manga and stuff, as the whole point of this series is to me to look back on the games specifically, both ones that I haven't played, like the original ones, and then games like this that are from my childhood, taking a look at them almost, 2 decades later. Oh, because I know Uber fans sometimes find these videos I make about these obscure niche things, and they like to comment how I don't mention some very specific thing about the story or the gameplay or some part of the production. That's fine, feel free to do that. Like, I really mean any comment or anything helps the video, I do appreciate it. Just know I'm going into all of these like I do with everything, in a very casual way. I'm just looking back at games from my childhood and playing them like I would any other game. I'm not here to 100% them and mention every little aspect of them or things about its development cycle and history behind the franchise, how it got to where it is. That's not really how I do things. I'll mention anything I find interesting on the fan wiki, that's about as far as I go. Okay, with that out of the way, we do have 6 RPGs to look at along with 4 spin-off titles, so why don't we stop dicking around and jack in to the first game, Mega Man Battle Network on the Game Boy Advance. Now this may come as a shock to you for a Game Boy Advance title made for children, but the stories of these games are not complicated. This one, for example, involves an evil organization called World 3. Yes, I called it WWW as a kid too. They're of course led by this universe's version of the evil Dr. Wily, and they plan on using a life virus which doesn't do what you think it does. Since pretty much everything's connected to the internet, the plan is to use the virus to interrupt every device, making them go berserk, infecting them with viruses, things like that. Of course, our guy, Lan Hikari, is on the case as he finds himself a part of some of World 3's plots by circumstance and makes it his mission to stop them. The 11-year-old. Halfway through the game, you run into Eugene Chaud. Yes, that's his real name. He operates Protoman.exe and is an official net battler, which basically allows him to fight cyber terrorism. The 11-year-old, or he's probably older, like 12 or 13, I didn't bother to look it up. He essentially acts as your rival, and that's it. He doesn't get much beyond that in the game. I do like how he tries to act like he's the coolest motherfucker ever with a name like Eugene Chaud. Like, come on, no one can take him seriously, right? My headcanon is that I imagine he thinks he's really cool, but everyone actually sees him as a huge nerd. If you haven't picked up on it yet, this is basically another version of the classic Mega Man story. Lan's last name is Hikari, which is Japanese for light. His dad, who most people call Dr. Hikari, made Mega Man, and turns out Wily's whole scheme is to get revenge on Lan's grandfather, Tadashi Hikari, who looks exactly like Santa. While I like the nod to the original series, gotta admit, after playing all the Mega Man games, kinda wish it wasn't Wily. At least X had Sigma for something different, And while it and the Zero games would integrate WiiWii and somehow, at least he wasn't the main threat, just a mention to attempt to tie all the games together while still doing its own thing. I think they should have come up with their own new villain since the game is so different from other Mega Mans. Like I said, it's a neat rendition of the WiiWii Light rivalry. I give it points for that, but just in the back of my mind while playing it, it feels like the same formula story-wise. Even the structure of how you get to WiiWii is similar, going to fight a bunch of robots, or in this case programs, that work for WiiWii who cause havoc in the world until you make it to his castle fortress thing at the end. I know this is a matter of perspective, because as a kid, this being my first intro to Mega Man, this totally went over my head. But now with context, I was like, ugh, this bitch again? Of course, the main difference is how you get to these bosses. Unlike other games where you have the freedom to choose who you fight at your leisure, this being an RPG, you fight them in order the story gives them to you. One thing I liked about the beginning of the story was how Lan just kinda got caught up in the World 3 schemes. He wasn't actively seeking them. Beginning is the key word here. For example, he only fights Fireman because the guy happened to install a virus in his oven in his house. He only fights Numberman because they chose his school and his classroom to do some indoctrination lesson. Even when he tries to help when they start fucking with the water of the town, the adults are like, fuck off, you're a kid, go play Pokemon or whatever. So Lan has to hide and wait for all the adults to leave in order to do something. I like this method. It made Lan feel like just a kid who happened to be good at deleting viruses with the program, but all the adults see him as a kid because he is. I know it sounds weird for a series based in the future with battling net navis, but it kind of grounded the story for me. Of course, halfway through this game and for every single game after it, that idea is long abandoned, but we'll get there when we get there. I actually like the structure of the story. I think it works for a handheld game. Essentially, it's split up into multiple scenarios that seem random but are connected in some way, like Lan will encounter a World 3 member one day, you beat them, then the game kind of puts you in the state where you can do whatever you want that is available at the time. When you feel like progressing the story, you usually go to sleep and then it informs you usually weeks or months pass in game. And then you start the next scenario. And I think this works great for a handheld title. Once you beat a scenario, that's your cue to either go explore and power up or save the game and take a break. It's obviously not the greatest story in gaming, and if you're playing this during a long session like I did, the pacing feels weird because that's obviously not how it's meant to be played, but I still enjoyed it. Well, let's get to what we play games for, the gameplay. Like I said, this is an RPG, and it sort of takes a mix of turn-based and action elements. At the start of each battle, Lan sends Mega Man battle chips, which are essentially one-use skills that deal big damage, heal Mega Man, or have some other effect to help you in battle. Once you select your chips, you go into the action part. Moving around in a 6x3 grid divided in half, one side for you, one side for the enemy, you do what Mega Man does best here, move around, dodge enemies, and use your Mega Buster. This is also when you use the chips, which will be your main damage dealing method. Once you're out of chips, you use your Buster, which deals a set amount of damage that can be upgraded by progressing through the game. When you run out of chips, you wait for the meter at the top to fill up, allowing you to select more chips to send to Mega Man. Chips you can send are found in your deck. That's right, baby, we got card game mechanics. Your deck has to have a minimum of 30 chips, and you can have up to 10 copies of what is called a standard chip. This will change as the games progress, and eventually will be limited to 4 copies per chip, similar to most card games. There are special chips called Navi chips that you get through progression or through extra bosses. These call other Navis that usually deal a large amount of damage and don't really miss sometimes. If it helps, think of them like summons in other games. You can only have 5 Navi chips at one time in this game, but again, that will change in the future. Each of these chips also have a code as well, represented by a letter. So you can select multiple chips that are the same. For example, you can select 2 cannons for one turn, but you won't also be able to select a healing chip. Except if the 2 cannons you pick have a code L, and healing also has L, then you can select them all for one turn. This adds a lot of thought into your deck building process. Do you simply get one of the best chips and spam it in there, or do you have a variety of chips with similar codes so you can do more actions in one turn? I know that all sounds kind of complicated, and I hope I explained it well, but trust me, after a few fights and editing your deck a couple times, it'll be second nature. Personally, early on I tried to go for a lot of chips that shared similar codes so I can make the most out of my turns, but as the game progressed and as I got new chips, I simply started substituting out the old weaker chips for the stronger ones, not thinking of any synergy. That's standard for me. I play all kinds of cards, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, and the deck building process has always been my least favorite part. I much rather prefer the actual playing, so that probably led to my late game methodology. I do think the system is the best part of Battle Network. That first time I sat down and actually thought about what to prioritize when making a deck, and then using it in action, and that feeling I get knowing my method worked, oh, it's so satisfying. This and the fact that there are 175 chips in the game probably means you can have multiple playthroughs with completely different builds. Okay, so where do you even get more of these chips? Well, you do eventually unlock a shop in the game that sells some decent chips, but not a lot. Your main method will be through random drop rates. Those are the chips you get by beating enemies and are usually based on enemy actions. I assume this is to simulate how classic Mega Man would use enemy weapons. At the end of every fight, you get a ranking based on how fast you killed everything, how much damage you took, and how efficient it was done, meaning not missing your shots. Capcom loves a ranking system, I guess. Lowest is 1 and the highest is an S rank. The higher your rank, the more likely you'll get a rare chip. I absolutely did not bother farming chips in this game. I did explore a lot and fought some of the extra bosses, but my goal was to finish the game while doing some side stuff. Another method to get chips are these chip traders. You put in a bunch of useless chips you probably don't need for a chance of getting a new chip. Most of the time though, it's one I already have 5 copies of because I have shit luck, which is why I don't play gacha games, or I would be in debt, or more debt than I already am. You may have noticed at the end of each fight you don't get experience. You either get a chip or money, so how does Mega Man get better? Well, you do this by finding power-ups, most of them in chests scattered throughout the world, or by purchasing them from merchants on the net. This is why it's worth it to explore, because trust me, you don't need them, but they make the game a hell of a lot easier. Plus, it's just really fun to figure out what weird shit you can jack into. There are 2 kinds of power-ups, HP memories, which raises your HP, and the simply titled power-up chips. These let you strengthen one of Mega Man's 3 skills for his buster. You can upgrade the damage, how fast he can fire, and his charge speed. But if you want my advice, put it all on damage and charge. Damage should be obvious, and you only unlock charge when you get it to level 2, so get that early at least. It can deal up to 16 times the damage when fully charged. Even without chips, you can do some real work with it. You can optionally also get armor from merchants based on wood, fire, and water respectively. Which, I don't know why, but it bothered me that they didn't change Mega Man's color. I mean, every game has done this since literally the first one on NES, and it just annoyed me more than it should have. Anyway, this armor has the damage you take, but if you're hit by that armor's weakness, you take double the damage. For example, if you have the wood armor and you fight Fireman, get fucked. Yeah, I didn't mention some chips and enemies have elemental weaknesses. I didn't mention them because they never really matter. Yeah, you deal double damage if they're weak to it, but you don't deal any less damage if they're strong against it or the same elements, so I never paid attention to it because I never got punished for not paying attention to it. The battle system, while being fun and customizable, being the first game, it obviously needs a lot of tweaking. For example, some enemies have hard to read patterns like these Pac-Man mortars. You can only hit them when they attack, but the game has no hint or indication of when they are gonna attack, so you have to just guess most of the time. Hitboxes on some enemies are garbage too, like these clouds. Fuck these clouds. They go up and down, but even when they're down, when they should be hit, I still miss them. What? And they have this annoying attack that stays on the field until they die. Fuck these things. While there were some annoying stuff, I did not find the game to be difficult. Maybe it's because I played this before, but like I said, I did go out of my way to get upgrades and some good chips, so around the mid-game I was not struggling in fights. What helped this is that Mega Man heals automatically in between fights, so you don't need to stock up on healing items or anything. They're not even present in the game. In fact, because of this, I found myself kind of brute forcing most of it, because I knew I'd get a free heal after every fight, so I feel like it made the game too easy. Also, you can save anywhere, so if you save often enough, even if you do die, you'll never have to retry long segments. So with that said, you probably think I had an easy time with this game, right? I did. But then, you get to the last dungeon. And the last dungeon is where this game takes that fuckery meter right there and just dials it up to 11. Yeah, if you've played the game, you know what dungeon I'm talking about. The power plant dungeon. Holy shit. So, where to begin? Well, notice this battery in the top right, it's a time limit. When it runs out, Mega Man can't auto-heal between battles anymore. That wouldn't be so bad, except by now you're fighting the most annoying and damaging enemies in the game, so auto-healing by this point will save your ass more often than before, so you kinda need it. And that's sorta bad, but there's more. The dungeon also has invisible paths. Sometimes there are good hints to tell you where to go, but a lot of the time you have to take a guess with no indication or hint of where a path is. That's bad enough, but on top of that, they throw in the most confusing puzzle in the entire game. You get the batteries, right? And then you put them in the slots. But if you put them in the wrong slots, you gotta take them out, and you gotta go back, and you gotta get them recharged. And that wastes time, which you can't do here. And then you get sidetracked because you get in a battle and you kind of forget. And then you get more batteries, and then a puzzle with some more slots. So you have to save the game so you can reset when you fuck up. So you fuck up, you reset, you battle some more, but then the timer's running down, so you need to get more batteries. So you save the game, you place the battery, you pick up the battery, it leads to another bigger puzzle. You place the battery, you're out of batteries, you gotta get the batteries you just used, and then you battle some more, time's going down, recharge the batteries, place the battery, pick up the battery, more battery. This is hell. This is what hell is like. Next time I think I need to tell someone to go to hell, instead I'll say, go to the power plant dungeon in Mega Man Battle Network on the Game Boy Advance. Yeah, it doesn't sound as good, but I think the point still gets across. And I swear to God, if one of you fucking comments saying, oh, I had no trouble with this, if you actually expect me to think that back in the day when you were a kid, and you got to this dungeon, and without any guides or walkthroughs or any pre-knowledge of it, you had no trouble with this dungeon, you're a fucking liar. I just don't believe you. If you ever bought this game used or you borrowed it from a friend and you hit that continue button, 10 times out of 10, they would be in this dungeon. It's that fucking bad. But okay, you get through it, you beat Electman, and then you're like, okay, after all that bullshit, game's gotta take it easy on me, right, wrong. That was the last long dungeon with puzzles, but now the goal is to find the World 3 base. To do this, we need to go to the Undernet, this game's version of the Deep Web. To get there, we need memos from 4 ex-World 3 members. 2 of the 4 are easy to get. It's the other 2 that are a problem. One you get from this old man who gives it to you on 2 conditions. One I think is based on Mega Man's level, but if you've been getting power-ups and exploring, this shouldn't be a problem. And again, I'm not too sure if this is one of the criteria. The other is you have to convince the female member. The ex-female member is, strangely, the twin sister of your homeroom teacher. Yeah, your homeroom teacher's twin sister is a retired cyber terrorist that teaches at a Sunday school now. Random. The problem is, this bitch won't give you her memo unless you have 60 of the 175 chips recorded in your library. I hate walls like this. Now for me, this was not a problem. At this point, I only needed 1 more chip. But here's the thing. Remember, I've been doing every fight. I've been getting great ranks and have been getting decent chip drops. I've been going out of my way to explore, get chips and items that are completely optional. I've even been doing the extra bosses to get their special chips. Even though I've been doing all that, I'm still 1 short. Are you kidding me? Imagine a kid comes to this point. A kid who might not be as good. A kid who probably ran away from some fights, especially with the last dungeon being how it was. Or someone who's just interested in the story and didn't really care for the side content and was beat. I would imagine people like that would have maybe 30 to 40 chips by this point. And again, at the time when guys were not as abundant online, you don't know how much you need. She doesn't give you a specific number or anything. Hell, even when I looked it up, people online seem to swear that it was 70 chips. That's how many you needed, but no, it's 60. So even people who claim to know this game don't know shit, so you come to this point and you realize you have to do possibly hours of grinding. What do you think the average kid's gonna do? Actually do it? Or turn it off? Yeah, I don't think walls like this should exist. I think the punishment for players not doing all the side stuff or maybe doing some extra things should be just getting their ass kicked by enemies. Yeah, I know it's to prepare you for the end bits of the game, make sure you're all ready, but you don't really need that many chips. You're probably not going to use all of them anyway. And remember, I have been doing that. I've been going around, I've been exploring, I've been doing all the things, and even I ended up short. That's kind of ridiculous. Alright, well anyways, after you fulfill her stupid criteria, you get the memos, and after traversing the web and beating Bomb Man, you get the base location. Lan wants to take them on himself, but his dad rightly says, no, these are dangerous terrorists, you stupid kid. Then Lan's like, come on, Dad! And his dad is like, okay, son, but are you willing to risk starting a war? Who says that to a kid? And Lan's like, yeah, Dad, I'll take responsibility for war. And Dad's like, cool, go get those terrorists. So he gets to the base, and you'd expect, okay, it's the last level in a Mega Man game, probably gonna have a boss rush, all Mega Mans have them. Well, no, which, thank God for me, I'm still sick of them. Instead, it's a dungeon rush, where you go through mini dungeons of all the past ones. No! Well, okay, it's better here. There's no time limit, and the battery puzzles are gone. It's a lot better. You just have to deal with the invisible paths. At the end of each dungeon, one of the Goon Squad comes to help out to attempt at some sort of Power of Friendship bookend. It comes out of nowhere. Once you make it to the end of the electric one, you better save, because you're gonna have to fight the last 2 bosses in a row with no saves in between. The first one, Magic Man, in my opinion, is the hardest boss in the game. He's super easy alone, just stands there and shoots in a straight line. But he summons random enemies to fight with him. And of course, it's the most annoying and damaging ones. Look at all this shit you gotta dodge. This is fucking impossible. It doesn't feel good beating him. It feels more like I was just lucky with the enemy spawns. After that, we get some exposition on Mega Man's creation. Really? Now? Remember, this is the end of the game, and we can't save, and just got done beating the biggest RNG fest boss, and still have the last one to deal with. Who's reading this? Your adrenaline's probably pumping right at this point. You want to finish this thing, not read lore. Well, whatever, we're here, so we might as well get the lore. Let's see, AIs, blah blah blah. Human DNA, okay, that's weird. I had a son. Something bad happened. I had to save him. Yeah, turns out Mega Man is Lan's dead brother, or I guess he's not dead. He's alive in the data. What can I say about that? I mean, yeah, it's a pretty good twist. Like, it's not like it comes out of nowhere, by the way. This is hinted at throughout the story that something's up with Mega Man. But like, what am I supposed to say to this? I can't dig too much into this, you know? I mean, yeah, it brings up a lot of implications, of course, about like life, death, reincarnation, how much of Mega Man is Lan's brother. Can you really transport all of a human mind into Data? Is it really right to force your son to live forever as Data and watch everyone else grow old and die? You know, did Lan's dad accidentally just find a way to make people immortal? And many more implications I know for a fact this series will never acknowledge, because it's also the same series that has a Mission Impossible spoof with Rom Cruise. So after that mindfuck, the last boss, not much to say. He's not that bad once you get the pattern. I mean, I did die once, so yeah, I had to fight fucking Magic Man again. But after that, he was no problem, just took some patience. So Waiwi is beaten, the day is saved, no one addresses the fact Mega Man has the soul of Lan's dead brother, or your teacher sister is an ex-terrorist. They all yuck it up, crime is committed off-screen, and the game ends with Lan going to stop it, because like in the real world, the police are useless. I mean, wow. The last part of that game, huh? Yeah, I was surprised. For some reason, I don't really remember the huge difficulty spike that was the power plant dungeon, as well as the big wall that it had there near the end, or even the dead brother thing. Overall, I'd say BM1 is fine. I mean, I enjoyed it. It's pretty good, but kind of similar to, you know, the other ones from the Mega Man games. It's like, it's not really a reason to go back to it, considering, you know, the sequels probably do it better. Except X. X1's still probably my favorite. Now again, I didn't do it, but I figured I might as well address the post-game. What you can do afterwards, of course, is collecting all the chips. And once you do, you can go further into the deep web and find a secret last boss, being Bass. Now some of you probably already commented because I said Mega Man and Bass earlier, but I know his name is Bass, Bass and Treble, Rock and Roll. I see the musical references in Mega Man, I'm not fucking stupid. Hell, I didn't even mention the town Lan lives in is called AC/DC Town. But I called him Bass as a kid because that's how it's spelled. The musical references didn't mean anything to me at the time, so he's Bass forever, deal with it. When you beat Bass, he gives you the Life Aura, which negates damage dealt to you that is less than 100. If that's the last thing you do in the game, and that's what you get, then what's the point of it then? Well, there's the multiplayer. Yes, to really sell this TCG aspect, you can trade and battle other people if you had a link cable. I never knew anyone else who had this game as a kid, so I never experienced that, but I assume social kids had a good time with it. I guess if you want to go beyond that, Battle Network has a competitive scene. That's pretty cool. Last thing about the first game to mention is a remake, one released way before the Battle Network collection. It was only released exclusively in Japan for the DS, titled Operation Shooting Star. Like most re-releases, it contains some fixes to the mechanics of the game, as well as some new chips, new things to do, and being on the DS, you can touch Mega Man. I can finally hug my dead brother. The biggest thing this game did was really integrate the spiritual successor to Battle Network, Mega Man Star Force, into the game. Not like as an extra boss or anything, no, they added a whole mandatory extra scenario that not only has you fight Star Force Mega Man, who time traveled from the future by the way, that's why he's here, that's the story. You also unlock him for use, as you can actually play as him in battle. But that's all I'll say about Geostellar for now. His story will be the finale of the series. Alright, enough about the first one, let's move on to Battle Network 2. Now keep in mind as we go through this, similar to the other Mega Man videos, I'm going to have less to say about each sequel in the series, as they all are basically the same game, just with slight gameplay adjustments, maybe a new mechanic here or there, and of course a different story. In this game, Mega Man and Lan need to stop an organization named Gospel, who, what else, want to destroy/take over the world. Who cares about that? It's summer vacation. Mega Man, I know what we're gonna do today. Stop a cyber terrorist plot. After saving Yai from suffocation and admiring her skinned Pikachu rug, what the fuck? Lan takes a test to become an official city net battler like Chad was in the last game, now fully justifying why we leave these cyber terrorist incidents to a child. Then the kids go camping, and teach other kids it's easy to start fires. You might be wondering, why don't we ever see these kids under some kind of adult supervision? Well, keep wondering, because after camp we get to go to an entirely different country all by ourselves, and my balls haven't even dropped yet. What could possibly go wrong? Anyway, I get to the airport and my wallet gets stolen, and when I make it to the country, a cabbie fucking threatens to kill me if I don't give him my battle chips. What the fuck? If that's not enough, on the flight home, my plane gets hijacked. Thanks for letting me go, Mom, you suck. Anyways, I'm gonna skip to the end of the story. So Gospel's plan is to revive some ultimate super Navi and make clones of it to do the evil. We go to their base and our friends show up out of fucking nowhere again. I have not seen these assholes since I went camping with them like 10 hours ago, and all of a sudden they show up at the enemy base to shoehorn in some kind of power friendship crap. Again. Well, whatever, we confront the Gospel leader and find out he's cloned the ultimate Navi, who is this dark destructive force we can't hope to beat. Oh, it's just Bass again. And he's really easy, I assume because he's a clone. Not to mention, he went from a secret endgame boss to the penultimate one. Talk about a demotion. We beat him, and it turns out the leader of Gospel, this global cyber terrorist organization, is some kid. Some other shit happens, and Bass forms into that, and... Okay, get this shit. Land can't send battle chips to Mega Man, so Mega Man uses some plot, and now Land sends his chips, not with his PET, but with love. Kill me. The last boss is actually kinda hard, had to retry him twice. But we win and find out this kid started Gospel because he was lonely, and he was abused as a kid. You're a terrorist. Land's dad says it seemed like he was being controlled by some evil force. Who could it be? Could the password to get into the Gospel HQ being World 3 mean anything? Or could one of the post-game dungeons being the World 3 server be a clue? Nah, I'm sure it's a coincidence. Let's enjoy the rest of summer. If you can't tell from my incredibly in-depth explanation, I checked out a BN2 story like halfway through. It's weird, the game is incredibly cheesy and hokey, but it's also taking itself really seriously at the same time. There were so many times where I laughed at a line, and then 1 second later realized, oh, they're serious? The first game wasn't some literary masterpiece, but at least sounded like real humans for the most part. Here it's like they took every generic line from a children's shonen manga and shoved it in the script. Despite the dialogue, sorry man, I can't take this shit seriously. I mean, yeah, suspension of disbelief or whatever, but I'm a kid who's been authorized by the government to fight terrorists because I know how to run an antivirus software. My dad willingly sends me into a city he knows is filled with intense and highly dangerous radiation because I said my dead brother and my Nokia N-Gage will protect me. Okay, well, while I'm not as into the story as the first game, the gameplay is still pretty solid, of course playing very similar to the first game with some improvements. Like, it's hard to explain, but when moving with Mega Man in battle, he feels more snappy. Like in the first one, he felt slightly laggy, and I mean very slightly. Here, my inputs felt like there was no delay, which made dodging enemies easier. What also made them easier is the devs this time put in startup animations for their attacks, so once you know the pattern, they become a lot easier to dodge. One big difference from the first game is Mega Man no longer automatically heals between battles. I love this, as now I was paying more attention to fights knowing I can't just brute force it anymore. There are a few ways to heal, either by jacking out and going back to the real world, but in cyberspace now sometimes the enemies will drop health along with the chips and money, and you can also use items in the overworld, not just healing items, but also keys for locked chests and items that help reduce or increase encounter rates. Another thing introduced in this game are proper side quests that will continue throughout the rest of the series. Some of these are really cryptic on what to do, and it's really annoying, but it's kind of worth it because doing them gives you some pretty good rewards like rare chips, upgrades for Mega Man, and a lot of money. The main new mechanic in this game is style switching. About halfway through the game, you unlock a style, which gives Mega Man an elemental armor, which does what it did in the last game, but also affects what your charge shot does. More importantly, it changes your color. Awesome. And then the actual style, which gives Mega Man a passive ability. The element you get is completely randomized from what I know, and is decided as soon as you press start on the main menu. The style you get is dependent on your actions during battle. I'm not going to describe all of them, just the one I got, which was Wood Guts. There's a dick joke in there somewhere. The gut style you get by using your Mega Buster a lot, which honestly I didn't think I used that much, but whatever. I did like it fit my style, and it doubles my buster damage, letting me deal up to 10 per shot when fully upgraded. But the trade-off is I can't shoot fast, but I don't mind that at all. What I did mind was the wood element. What it does is make me now weak to fire, and guess what types of enemies were in the dungeon I got this style. The other thing it does is change my charge shot. Now I have this tornado, which combined with my guts ability deals a fuck ton of damage. The trade-off is I can no longer shoot across the screen only 2 spaces ahead of me. This was fine for enemies and made fighting them easy. It sucked for bosses though. Remember, I can only shoot up to the middle enemy tile, and guess where every one of the bosses would sit? All the way in the back, so my charge shot was useless for them. You can change back to normal Mega Man at any time, so it's not like you're stuck with it, but it was annoying knowing I could beat the bosses way faster if I had my range. Now apparently you do get a second style after a certain number of battles, but during my playthrough of the game, this never happened to me. I only got the one. I mean, I know exactly why I didn't get it. It's because during the last half of this game, I didn't do a lot of the fights. Because this game has a really big problem. There's so much fucking backtracking. One good thing about this game is that the environments in the net have improved, where in the first game they were pretty generic. In this one, they each are different, color-coded, and have their own personality. And I hope you like them because you'll be seeing them a lot. So many of the scenarios in this game can be summed up as, go here, then go back where you were, go to another area, now you gotta go back to where you were before. Are you fucking kidding me? I was just fucking there. The worst is the scenario right before the last dungeon. Not only is there all this ice around the net hindering your progress, you constantly have to go between multiple areas like 5 fucking times. The only gameplay here is walking back and forth. It's so tedious. When you're land, doing this is fine. It only takes about a minute to get to your destination. But as hub, you still have to deal with random encounters, and most of them will be in areas you are so overleveled for and don't need any chips from, so it's just wasting more time. You can run by pressing the L button, but I didn't even want to get in the encounter. I had to buy the sneak run item to get rid of encounters. I couldn't deal with them, man. But wait, you have to fight enemies, not for some chip count like the last game. No, instead this game decides to hinder your progression until you give a character a very specific chip. Now remember, chips have different codes and you don't always get the same one from an enemy. So if you end up at a spot where a guy asks for a chip you don't have, well go farm, idiot, and pray you even get the one you want. Or maybe you did have it but didn't use it, so you traded it at the chip trader because you wanted something better. Well, fuck you, stupid. You should have known this character in this game you never played wanted 3 copies of it. It's so fucking annoying. Like I said, the gameplay is very fun and improved a lot, and I didn't even mention it, but I love the music in these games. Every single Mega Man Battle Network game has fucking banger soundtracks. Especially the dungeon music, it's fucking sick. Now even the dungeons, both in the first game, this game, every game, I think are all very fun and memorable and have unique gimmicks. Also, this game has way more content to do, as there are a shit ton of new chips to collect, 250 in total. And of course you still have the extra bosses, secret bosses, post-game dungeons. You can play this game for weeks probably. Except I just don't care about all that, because the game just decided to be an asshole by the end of it again. Once again, if you're off grinding and exploring the game, you probably had no trouble with the chip requirements. But fuck you if you actually try to justify the backtracking, that is some ass. Don't get me wrong, while Battle Network 2 annoyed me, it's still better than Battle Network 1, improving on gameplay and offering a lot more content. Yeah, while I wasn't as into the story, I honestly recommend people start here, as it's not difficult to follow even if you haven't played the first game, and it's just a better playing version of 1, start here. If you can deal with the, backtracking and constant walls. Alright, let's move on to Battle Network 3 now. You may notice that from here on out, Capcom really decided to lean into the trading and collecting part, and do what Pokemon does, having 2 versions of a game to encourage trading and multiplayer. For Battle Network 3, there is a blue version and a white version. For this video, I am playing the blue version since it's Mega Man. I gotta pick blue version, and this was the one I played as a kid. So the story for this one is things are pretty good in the world right now. No cyber terrorism, no evil net navies, everything is great. Except when it isn't, because Waiwi is back with new members of World 3. At first their attacks seem random, but they are trying to get all the Tetra passwords to unleash Alpha, the prototype of the internet that went berserk after being a buggy mess, and was put in the recycle bin. Yeah, that's pretty much it. You should know how these go by now. Evil Navi attacks, someone's in danger, and Land and Mega Man need to stop them. I will say, the stuff in between all that, with the writing and shit, has gotten better. There are actual times of character development in this game, not just for Land and Mega Man, but even Dex and Chaw get something, with Dex's relationship with his brother and Chaw's with his dad. There's a clear improvement here. Oh, and Mail and Yai are still just kind of there. There's even a mini episode where Land and Mega Man form a friendship with a kid, Mamoru, sick with HBD, which is a disease that killed Hub, which is what eventually led him being Mega Man. I was actually really happy that the writing improved so much from the last game. It not only has some more drama, but there's even some funny dialogue to lighten things up, and I mean it's intentionally funny now. I just love Bubble Man with his funny design and his stupid goons that were clearly afraid of Mega Man and openly discussed their plans. Stuff like that is charming and adds a lot of character to what would be forgettable one-off bad guys. There are some pacing issues with this subplot with the N1 Grand Prix, which is a tournament of net battlers. That's right, this game has a tournament arc. Get used to it, because this will not be the last game with a tournament arc. It will not be the last game. Anyways, in between all the story stuff, you have to go do these qualifying matches, which, similar to the licenses from the last game, are mostly just a gauntlet of fights. Now, I didn't mention this with 2, but in between scenarios, you had to get licenses to progress across the net. I didn't bring them up because I didn't think they were worth mentioning, but after playing this game with the qualifiers, I hate these. Both the license stuff and this N1 shit. It's not fun to me. It just kills any momentum that the story was having. Yeah, it's revealed it's a World 3 plot, so it's tied into the story, but I like how the first game was just after finishing one scenario, you can dick around, do whatever you want, and then continue at your own pace. Now the games are like, oh, you want to continue the main plot? Well, go out of your way to do this other thing first. But hey, I'll give it this, it's not as bad as other things. So gameplay wise, to no one's surprise, it's exactly the same as 2. Not many changes have happened. One cool thing this game adds is Number Man codes. After the second boss, you unlock this Number Man in the chip shop, and entering certain codes gives you special chips and items. These codes were basically scattered everywhere when this game came out. Not only are there some in-game you can find, but you can just find them all across Japan through advertisements, magazines, on Noodles. Even the anime and manga would give out codes. Nowadays you can easily look this stuff up online, and I sure as hell did. Look, you could have seen these at any time as a kid, and anything to make my playthrough easier, I'm all for it. I don't give a shit what anyone says. I mean, these special chips don't help that much anyway, at least in this game. If I did draw them, it would deal a lot of damage, sure, but most of my deck was still the standard ones I'd have at this point, so yeah, it was easier, sort of. Cool feature though, this is apparently in the rest of the games, and I will continue to use this. Styles are back again. This time I got Electric Custom Style, which let me use 6 chips at the start of a round instead of 5 and turn my charge shot into a paralyzing shot. Pretty nice. Now the main new thing for this game is the Navi Customizer, which is the new way Mega Man powers up. You no longer use power-up chips to upgrade. Now you have several Tetris-shaped blocks that you have to fit into this customizer, but there are rules you have to follow. Like blocks with squares can't go into the line, blocks without the squares don't work unless they're in line, and 2 blocks of the same color can't be next to each other. If you violate any of these rules, Mega Man will get an error, which usually gives him some shitty effects like less health, weak attacks, stuff like that. But sometimes they can actually be beneficial, especially when you get a modding kit that lets you override some of them, if you know what you're doing. I didn't, so I mostly try to keep it without error. I think the system is pretty cool, and I think a lot of people did as well, as it's kept throughout the rest of the series. It sort of has this puzzle mechanic to your upgrading. And with pieces having these rules, you have to decide if having a certain one at a point in the game is more beneficial to you, and maybe you should remove this one piece and make room for this other one, make this part easier. I think that's pretty cool. I actually really like this system. Yeah, the Navi Customizer is really the only big major difference. Everything else is just like BN2. Everything. Yes, it's back. Backtracking is still a pain in the ass, no matter how you look at it. At least you can find a sneak run upgrade that helps keep away enemy encounters of lower levels, so at least they have that. But like I said, backtracking is backtracking, especially when it's forced. It's not fun. You want to talk about not fun though? The chip requirements. Oh my god. Hold on to your ass, because this is the most times I think they've halted progression because some character needed a certain chip. And you know what? They feel harder to come by too. In this game, it feels like if you don't get at least a half decent rank, you get like 30 zenny, let alone the specific chip you need. They did add this chip order system, so if you had a chip before, you can order another one, so that allows you to use the chip trader with less worry. But I guess to compensate, they added even more chip requirements? Talk about 2 steps forward and 5 steps back. Again, if you're playing these as a kid, and it's the only game you play for like a month or whatever, it's fine with that context, blah blah blah. But today, playing it more casually as an adult, it's fucking lame. Every time I needed a chip and it turned out I didn't have it, I died a little inside knowing I had to go somewhere and happen to find the exact enemy and do well enough that not only would I get its chip and not some other enemies, but also that it would be the chip with the right code, otherwise I have to try again. I really hate this, man. I hated the chip requirements so much in this game, I actually didn't even beat it. Yeah, that's right. I got to a point where I was just like, I'm fucking done, I don't want to do this anymore, it's not fun. I got to that Mamoru part I mentioned before, and again, I needed a very specific chip. And after looking up what I needed to do to get it, again, it's not awful, but I'd played the game for about 8 hours at this point. I got other shit to do, life is short, I'm not going to waste my time playing a game that's just Battle Network 2 with a puzzle game. Better story or not, I just don't care. And it's like, I don't really think my opinion of this game was going to change after fighting Bowl Man. Now, I did watch other people play this on YouTube, and I would have just been more annoyed, because there are future dungeons where you need fire chips to burn vines. Hope you stocked up on those. Or how about going on the net, and you need water chips to extinguish fire in the scenario before the last dungeon. Which is the same thing as the ice crystals in the last game, and I hated that too. All for what? Fight Bass for the 10th time in the post-game? See this universe's version of Dr. Cossack? See Land and Mega Man fuse with the power of brotherly love? Yeah, no thanks. And it sucks, because really the chip walls and the backtracking are the only downsides to this game to me. The rest of it's great. The gameplay, the graphics, the music. Just knowing what I have to do to progress demotivated me so much. Alright, going to fight specific enemies to find some item maybe like once or twice throughout the game, that's fine. That's just a little thing to break the pace. But having to constantly get me to stop what I'm doing, go farm forever, maybe getting the chip I want, it's not fun to me. I don't find it fun. If you find it fun, don't talk to me. Alright, why don't we take a break now and take a look at some spin-offs. Yes, spin-offs for a series that's already a spin-off of another series. Not uncommon, especially for Mega Man. First, there's Rockman.exe Whis, released exclusively in Japan for the Wonder Swan. I've mentioned the Wonder Swan before in some of my anime games videos, but for those that don't know, this is a Japanese exclusive handheld made through a collaboration between Bandai and Koto Laboratory. It mostly has games based on anime Bandai owns like One Piece, Detective Conan, Digimon, but also has some third-party games like one based on the Battle Network games. This is a side-scrolling shooter similar to the classic Mega Man's, and I mean that literally. It's got similar stiff controls, one-hit death spikes, and bottomless pits. Seems the story is more based on the anime, considering it starts with a recreation of the opening along with the music. It has some unique elements, like multiple paths to take, letting you fight a different boss at the end of each stage. And to tie it in more with Battle Network, you can use chips sent by land. A lot of these are one-time use, but some can be used indefinitely, like the sword. And the game's not really something I would recommend playing today unless you want to feel this novelty of a Battle Network side-scroller on WonderSwan, because if you want to play a janky Mega Man side-scroller in general, stick to NES. Or why not try the third dimension with Mega Man Network Transmission, released internationally on the GameCube? So you'll notice it's the first Battle Network with voice acting, not in English though, they're not going to spend that much money on this. The story takes place a month after the first game, where a new virus dubbed the Zero Virus is infecting Navis and making them... That's right, we're bringing Mega Man Zero into this. It's not as cool as you'd think. It's another side-scrolling Mega Man's, eventually even letting you select a stage in any order similar to the classic ones. Once again, the main difference being Land sending chips to Mega Man, which have ammo as well as a stamina meter, sort of, so you can't spam them. You need these in the beginning because your Buster fucking sucks. At least in the main games without power-ups at the beginning, it's still useful. Here it barely does any damage, fires slow as hell, and you can't charge until you get a power-up to upgrade it. Similar to the WonderSwan game, it takes a lot of inspiration from classic Mega Man, especially the bullshit, and even straight up uses the same stage gimmicks, like Quick Man having basically the same mechanic as the NES version. Here though, Mega Man's stiffness feels so wrong. I think because it's 3D and several generations later, but it feels like a classic Mega Man, and I don't like it. Those games had the excuse of being on NES. This one, I feel, is doing this control intentionally to give that old school feel, but it's GameCube. It's almost 20 years since then. Can we update the controls? One great thing is the music. It's really good. After playing only 16-bit games, it's nice to hear some CD quality. Once again though, there's just not really much reason to go back to it unless you are a really big fan of Battle Network. And it's not that the game's bad, it's just that going back to it these days is pretty rough. So instead, let's go back to the home turf of the Game Boy Advance with Mega Man Battle Chip Challenge. Now, one interesting thing is you can pick different characters besides Land and Mega Man, including 2 new characters made solely for this game, and each one has a different story. The game plays exactly the same no matter what though. All of them center around this big net battle tournament. Yes, another tournament arc. Get used to it. I picked Male to be different, and her story is feeling bad for maybe being the cause of Land getting sick and missing the tournament because he lent her his umbrella on a rainy day. It's pretty bad. You know what else is bad? Not this game, because I couldn't tell you if it's good or bad, because I never played it. You may see all this stuff happening on screen and think, that's me doing it, but nope, I am not touching a single button. How Battle Chip Challenge works is you make a deck of battle chips and pray to your gods. It has a strange bracket system where every turn it selects the chips for you and you watch the battle happen. You can set some chips to the side and use them with L or R when your meter is full. That's all the interaction you get. It's more of a deck building game if anything. I'm not even like speeding this footage up through emulation or editing or anything. This is actually a 2x speed built into the game, even they know this is tedious as hell. Honestly, it kind of reminds me of those auto-battling mobile games they have today. Surprised they haven't used the system for some kind of Battle Network mobile game. This style works great on a phone, but for GBA in the 2000s, while I don't think it's terrible, it's definitely not fun. Most of this footage you're seeing, I'm not in front of the screen, I'm off doing other things. I'm actually writing the script right now while the game is running in the background. So is it really possible for me to give my thoughts on a game I can't really even play? Yes, it's bad. I don't like it. They also made a version for the WonderSwan. They actually bothered to do that. Finally, the last Battle Network spin-off is Rockman.exe 4.5 Real Operation, exclusive to Japan for the GBA. Now this is more along the lines of a simulator game you'd expect, making your GBA act like an actual PET would in the games. You can use your email, a calendar, talk with your Navi, all that stuff. You can of course also wander around the net and battle. The battles this time are semi-automated. Your Navi moves around on its own and you send chips that appear randomly on the bottom of the screen. So again, it's more of a simulator, as this is how it would be if you used a PET in Universe. That's fine, but come on, Battle System and Battle Network is the best part. And this is a game where you can play as other Navis, which is really cool, and it's on the same system. Just use the same battle system. I don't think anyone would have complained. Now, I would have played this game more, but about 30 minutes in, it froze. Which I think in all my years of playing things on actual consoles, through Game Boy players on the GameCube, and emulation, this is the first time ever a GBA game has frozen on me, and I feel like anything this game does after wouldn't be as magical as this. So fuck it, we got 3 other games to look at anyway. Hey, since we just looked at 4.5, let's look at the next game, Mega Man Battle Network 4. Once again, 2 versions. There's Red Sun and Blue Moon. I picked Red Sun because, well, I picked Blue last time. The story of this game sucks. So there's a giant asteroid that's on a collision course with Earth, and when it hits, it will destroy the world. So all the world's best scientists, including Land's dad and the definitely not evil Dr. Regal, come together to find a way to destroy it. This is essentially the plot of Armageddon. Mega Man now has the same plot as a Michael Bay film. Take that however you want. Dr. Ikari tries to use a laser to destroy it from the Earth, but someone sabotages it and it fails. Even though it is clearly sabotaged, the other scientists just think, oh man, he failed, Ikari sucks. Let's follow this clearly not evil guy instead. And this moment once again adds to my theory that all scientists in fiction are idiots. Regal's plan is to send the world's greatest net battler to space, well, their Navi anyway, because Get this. The asteroid has a server. The Armageddon asteroid is connected to the internet. Turns out the world's greatest net battler is, gasp, land in Mega Man. What? Ah, yeah. You may have noticed it has taken me quite a while to introduce our protagonists to the main plot of the game. That's because the entire game, they're going on an entirely separate storyline. They really don't show up until the last hour, and that's because for the entirety of the game, you're going through multiple tournament arcs. Yes. Multiple. So here's where Red Sun and Blue Moon offer something interesting. There are 3 tournaments you enter in the game, and each has 3 scenarios, each revolving around Land's opponent. The cool thing about this is there are multiple scenarios for each tournament, which one you get is random and dependent on your version. The bad thing is, there are multiple scenarios for each tournament, and which one you get is random dependent on your version. Now this adds some variety for multiple playthroughs, which is mandatory for 100% completion, but I'll get to that later. Now because the game doesn't know which of these you'll get because they're random, they are as disconnected from the main plot as possible. So essentially, every tournament is a filler arc. Along this tournament arc, Land and Mega Man find a dark chip, which I'm sure is good, as well as an evil organization named Nebula who seem to be picking up the slack from World 3 and Gospel for cybercrime. There is this whole subplot of Mega Man having a dark side because of the corruption of the dark chip. The whole time I'm like, really? If you're playing 4 at this point, you've probably played the other 3 games, and you would know, like I do, that Mega Man is the biggest Boy Scout on the net. Gee, I wonder how this subplot's gonna wrap up. It just comes off as more filler. That's what you can describe this game as, filler, the whole thing, except maybe the ending. Even the tournaments are the most nothing ever mattered bullshit. Each scenario is literally forcing Land and Mega Man to go on some back and forth trip, with the ultimate goal usually being to waste time, and by extension, my time. I don't like wasting my fucking time. And let me show you, I'm going to take you through my own tournament scenarios that I got playing through Red Sun. The first one is nothing special. Oh, except we fight a dead girl. Yet Ghost exists in the Battle Network universe now, and it has us go around the net exercising ghosts, which admittedly the dialogue was kind of funny, but other than that weirdness, it wasn't really too annoying, definitely strange. The next one though is some fuck. So I was about to fight Dex when his brother from the last game gets kidnapped, and the kidnapper says only Land can save him by following the kidnapper's instructions. And here's where one of the game's main problems comes out. So most of the kidnapper's instructions are, go here, solve this puzzle, talk to this guy, get this thing, now go here, now go there, making you go back and forth. And as you're traveling through the net for the 4th time, that's when you realize there are barely any dungeons in this game. In the past games, every scenario had a unique dungeon to keep things fresh and made each one memorable. Sure, some sucked, but I think the good outweighed the bad, thanks to some of the puzzles, and some of the best music in the game comes from these dungeons. Here, because they don't want to make all those dungeons, since obviously making over a dozen unique dungeons sounds like hell, each scenario just has you run around the net in the same locations every time, sometimes with some unique mechanic, which is usually press B, and they come off as gimmicky. I actually really like the unique dungeons they had in this game, well, 2 out of the 3. Riverboat one was pretty neat, trying to complete the story, and the last dungeon having to plan out your path to step on these panels in order were of course annoying at first, but once you understand what needs to be done and use common sense, it's not difficult. They were pretty fun to me. But for the tourneys, well, hope you like going to the same location 5 fucking times. Anyways, we find Dex's brother, and it turns out there was no kidnapper. Dex's brother believed in him so little, he pretended to be kidnapped, so Land would be late and get disqualified, so Dex could win. Literally the whole scenario was a waste of time. I was so happy when I found this out. And what do we get for it? The replacement for Styles. Instead, we have Double Souls now. How these work is instead of a permanent upgrade, you activate a Double Soul by sacrificing a certain chip in battle, giving you this new form for 3 turns. This sucks. Not only is it now just a 3-turn clock opposed to a cool permanent modifier, it's dependent on what chips you use. To get the Gutsman one, I needed these panel destroy chips, which I never used. For every game, I think they are the most useless chips and always traded them away. Even if I had some, I wouldn't put them in my deck anyway, so I didn't care, this was useless to me. The last scenario with Top Man was fine, no complaints, it was even kind of entertaining. So yeah, that was my Den City Battle Tournament arc. After that is a fixed one where you go on a date with Mail, which I'm not made of stone, I thought it was kinda cute. But during this date we get a few important things. One is we get our Navi customizer back. More importantly, Numberman codes, hell yeah. Thanks to this, you'll see me use a chip that has this overly designed character that seems to be appearing a lot in this game, and I think it needs some explanation. So some pachinko developers named Konami had this nobody employee, Hideo Kojima, make a game for Game Boy Advance called Boktai that follows this character named Django, a vampire hunter who uses sunlight-based weapons to kill them. The unique thing about this game is they had a built-in solar sensor that when exposed to sunlight powered up your attacks in the game, made to encourage kids to play outside. And for reasons I am not aware of, for the rest of the Battle Network games, this franchise will be referenced. I just figured I'd mention it because you're probably going to see it in my footage all the time because they are the best chips in the game. And it's going to come up again, so keep it in mind. Final thing we get in this scenario is we get access to the dark chips. Before that, let me explain this mood meter. Depending on how well you're doing in a battle, Mega Man's mood will increase or decrease. This is only useful if you land a counter hit, you enter full synchro, which doubles the damage of your next chip. Love this mechanic, so glad it's a mainstay now. Until this point with the dark chips, if you got hit, he would get sad or anxious or whatever. Now take enough of a beating and you get access to the dark side. The most overpowered chips in the game, healing you fully, dealing insane damage. The trade-off being errors happen during the fight and you lose 1 pip of your max HP, which can never be regained unless you beat the post-game. But honestly, it's worth it to me. When I got the dark chip, I immediately used it. The benefits heavily outweigh the cost. Even if you die when using a dark chip, you instantly revive. You can't control Mega Man anymore, he goes berserk. He just spams all the broken dark chips, but I mean, at this point, it's pretty hard to die in the game, only for the low price of my soul. But after all that, we move on to the next arc, the Eagle Tournament arc, and I'll admit, this one was probably the most fun to me. I first went up against a curry chef and had to beat him in a cooking battle by playing this chopping minigame. Yeah, this one was fine. I am biased toward any cooking or food-based episode, though. The second one, Mr. Match, a former member of World 3 who has shown up in every game so far by the way, gets into a fight with our opponent who uses Burn Man, and they try to prove who's the bigger hothead. This one was also fine. Dousing fires around the net wasn't too annoying, and I like how to convince Burn Man to stop burning down the net, we tell him we beat Fireman so we're stronger. That was kind of funny. The last one I'm honestly kind of disappointed by because it could have had a lot of potential. My next opponent was nailing Roll of all people. That honestly shocked me. And instead of this being some good character stuff, it turns into us rescuing Roll from a perverted stalker, their words not mine. It becomes that bullshit sexist thing of don't underestimate us because we're girls. I beat her really easily. He's got me the Roll Soul Link, which I did use more because you use a healing chip, which I always have handy, but ultimately was never really useful. After that, it's the Red Sun Tournament. By this point, the laser thing happens, so this is the tourney to determine the world's best net battler. It's taking place in Nettopia. This is that foreign country from 2 where we got robbed and almost murdered, you remember. And we go there again. Alone. And this time we get kidnapped. Why do we keep coming here? Turns out though, this kidnapping of a minor was a test to see if we could even enter the tournament. Oh, I guess that makes it okay. Oh right, I tried to block it out of my memory, but I haven't even mentioned these preliminary tests. Or say it with me, more filler. It's usually running around performing forced annoying side quests. The worst one is the one for the Eagle Tournament. You have to get 50 points to qualify. Okay, where do you get the points? In random ass locations. Literally you have to run around, press A on everything, jack into everything, talk to everyone, cause anyone, anything could have points. And this right here is so tedious that this right here I remembered was the moment I turned the game off. This is when I stopped playing Battle Network. Being forced to go around and press A on everything, trying to interact with everything, that's not fun. Who would find that fun? Do you find that fun? Get out. Like, who was the person at Capcom that thought pressing A on every object, every wall, talking to everybody, just so I could have the ability to progress in the main story was a good idea? It's padding at best. And yeah, obviously Kid Me couldn't stand this. I fucking hated it. No matter how much I like Battle Network, I just couldn't do it, and of course I didn't play the rest of the games 5 and 6 because I kind of assumed they would do the same thing, so I left it there and I didn't really come back to the series until years later when they made Mega Man Star Force, but like I said before, that's a story for next time. And admittedly, I was going to stop here again because once I realized this was the game that had this, I was not having any of it. But I realized I didn't beat 3 last time, so I was like, okay, I'll stick it out since I didn't beat this one as a kid. I'll go for it, I'll finish it, see what I was missing. It was hell. Anyway, the last tournament arc, this one got progressively worse. My first battle was with Thunderman, a returning character from Battle Network 2, but Mega Man gets cursed and, of course, you have to go around the net collecting bullshit. Except my health ticks down by 5 every second, even when in a cutscene or talking to someone. This didn't make it impossible, I can just heal by jacking out, but it seems unnecessarily harsh. I beat Thunderman and got his soul thing, I literally never used it. Next, my opponent was representing the motherland of Africa, or Netfrica, as it's called. And after saving these Negroes and beating this kid, my last match was with Cold Man, where I had to go to Siberia, or Sharo, to fix these satellites to prevent an ice age. Now this one is definitely, without a doubt, the worst scenario in the entire game. You have to mash the B button so much to shovel snow, you're working under a time limit, you have forced fights that you have to do under another time limit, big power plant energy. Also, you have to get certain chips in order to progress, but thankfully I could buy most of them and had a lot of them already, so I wasn't as pissed off by it. But you know what, after the points thing, I was just like, whatever at this point. I wanted to beat the game, I knew I was close, so let's finish this. So after winning that tournament, we go to where I started the Synapsis, with Lan helping the scientists with the asteroid, where, surprisingly, Regal betrays us? What? He's evil? And it turns out he's the leader of Nebula? Who? Oh yeah, that new terrorist group, I completely forgot about them. Regal plans to... I'm not actually sure what the plan is. He says he wants to make an evil world, but how does the asteroid play into this? If it hits, he dies too, so he has to stop it. So is the plan to save the world himself and be a hero? If he hadn't sabotaged the laser in the first place, he would have gotten some credit for that, so why stop it and risk this? Or is the plan to hold the world hostage and kill everyone if they don't give in to his demands, but then he dies too? But well, whatever, evil, so we have to stop him. We managed to send Mega Man to the asteroid server, where it's 2 a.m. Why is there a fucking train running at 2 a.m.? We managed to send Mega Man to the asteroid server, where we beat Regal's Navi Laser Man, who, gonna be honest, I think has the coolest design in this game. Then we find out the server's AI is, oh hey, it's Duo from Mega Man 8. In this game, he's the last boss. Neat. Well, before him, we have to fight Mega Man's Heartless, and unfortunately, after we beat Shadow Mega Man, for the final fight, we don't have access to Dark Chips anymore. Lame. And Duo is actually pretty hard, man. It took me a couple tries to beat him. I actually had to restart and completely rework my deck in order to beat him. Never had to do that before. After that, thanks to everyone sending Megs their energy, he gets the strength to push the asteroid off of Earth's course, and Duo says he will return, maybe in a few years or centuries, to judge humanity again. And go back to driving your car, you nerd. After that, Lan, Dad, and Chad, he's in this game, they all corner Regal, who, no shit, instead of being captured, decided to jump off the roof. And then the credits roll. The game's over. What an out-of-nowhere dark ending. Now, like most other Mega Man games, you probably go back in after the credits, hit that continue button, expecting to just go back to your last save, and then do all the post-game stuff, you know, collecting chips, post-game dungeons, all that. Nope. Instead, you are prompted to start a second playthrough, because remember, you have to beat this game multiple times, because there are other souls that are version exclusives that you have to get, because remember, the scenarios are random. And, during your second playthrough, chests are different, so there are different items you have to collect. And, there are new enemies that are stronger that you have to fight them again, and the bosses are stronger, so essentially each playthrough is subsequently harder. And then, only after doing all that, can you finally access the post-game dungeon. You may notice so far that my health is the lowest it's been for an endgame in this series. That's because there isn't much to do in this game if you do one playthrough. Even still, while doing my usual exploring, I barely found any chips, upgrades, or cool items. There's not really much side content your first time through. I clocked in a little under 10 hours, and about an hour of that is me leaving the game paused while I eat lunch. I beat this in one day. I'm sure the length is because they expect you to play through it again 2 more times, but I don't want to do that. Like, why would anyone in their sane mind, unless you're a really hardcore completionist, do that? So you can play more boring scenarios that have you run around doing more useless bullshit that you know is even more useless now that you've actually played the game and know the real plot? So I can fight the fish guitarist again? I was unfortunately not excited to play 5 or 6 because this game gave me heavy X7 vibes. And what I mean by that is that it tried to do something different, tried to do something new to, you know, not get that same criticism that every Mega Man game seems to have of being the same thing over and over, lacking in innovation and all that. But instead of actually creating something new and unique and actually refreshing the franchise, they just end up making something nobody likes and actually almost kills it. And guess what? This game pretty much killed it. Well, let's hope the 5th game does something to keep my interest. Now remember, I haven't played this one or the next one, so from here on out, I'm going in blind. 5's versions are Team Proto Man and Team Colonel, and this game released around the same time as the DS, so it was also ported to the DS only a few months after it released on the GBA. That version includes both games and of course additional content and upgraded sound?
Jacket! Mega Man, execute! Let's bust some viruses! Battle routine, set! Execute!
And and it's not just me and my dirty mind, but the name Mega Man Double Team sounds kinda sus, doesn't it? I decided to go with Team Colonel for this one because, look, I don't like Chad and Proto Man, I don't find them cool or interesting, and I thought maybe a new character would help spice things up. It didn't. So the story is Nebula is back, and Regal, who of course survived, actually sort of wins and kidnaps Lan's dad and takes his friend's PETs away, somehow making them more useless than they already are. Lan is fine though, because this global cyber terrorist can't look around a fucking corner. Trying to find out what happened to his dad, Lan meets Beryl and his Navi Colonel. Yeah, they're taken from Mega Man X now. Beryl convinces Lan to join his anti-Nebula force to save his dad, and yeah, that's the story. The game plays out the same each time, thank God. The scenarios you do are dependent on your version. It goes like this: you do a scenario that introduces your next party member, you fight them, they join you, and you do the new big thing for this game, liberation missions. It's a sort of strategy game mixed in between the rest of the usual gameplay. I was sort of excited for this. I actually love strategy RPGs, despite me sucking at them. Remember, I like to brute force stuff, and that mentality does not work with these games. But honestly, this mechanic was very disappointing to me, because while the map movement and turn order placement is all fine, I like that, when you engage an enemy, it's just a regular ass battle. The only difference is you have to beat an enemy in 3 turns or you lose, and turns, unlike in regular battles, happen automatically, so you can be close to killing an enemy, but uh-oh, you were 1 frame off, fuck you. There is a part where sometimes you have to switch sides, but it doesn't really add much, you just press L&R to switch directions. Thrilling. You do play as the other Navis you recruit, which is cool and something I've wanted for a while. Until you realize compared to Mega Man, they all suck. Oh, also, Double Souls return in this game, they're just as useless here. Anyway, each of the Navis have different charge shots, and they have some sort of property that's unique to them, like Nightman doesn't flinch when charging his buster, things like that. But the problem I have with it is, despite you upgrading Mega Man, they stay the same. You can have like max stats and attack where you're doing 5 damage per shot, but they still do 1. It's so annoying. You also can't use dark chips with them, which also return from 4. Unlike that game though, you have to buy them here and put them in your folder manually. They're not a situational thing anymore. But yeah, considering you can't use the most powerful chips in the game with them, I never wanted to use them. Thankfully they were limited to the liberation missions. Except for one scenario where Mega Man gets captured and turned evil, so you have to use the Colonel for it. And surprisingly, it wasn't the annoying dungeon mechanics that bothered me. It was being forced to use a character that doesn't let me use all the tools available to me. I really hate it when games limit me like this, even for story reasons. I don't like it. He doesn't even pick up certain chests because they're upgrades from Mega Man, so I gotta go back later to get them. Good to see the backtracking is in the devs' minds in some form. But yeah, I don't have much to say beyond that. Like, besides the liberation missions and the new story, if you put the other gameplay sections next to 4, you wouldn't know which one to shoot. I will admit, while I did just joke about it, this game has little to no backtracking, and there weren't really any chip requirements, nor were there any sections that felt like filler. Everything happened for a reason. So it is better with all that stuff, but again, at the end of the day, it's another Magman. Like, this just seems to be a curse with these Mega Man games, that Capcom has gotten so complacent in their formula that anything they do that's supposed to be a new thing to shake it up comes off as a tacked-on gimmick, because 90% of the game is the same as the last few. Playing these Mega Man games back-to-back like this for the past year have really shown me that if you don't give games time and you just keep pumping them out yearly because you know they're popular, because it doesn't give game developers time to like really innovate and really do something new to make sure the games stay fresh, people get sick and tired of it fast. I'm sure if I filmed myself playing this game throughout the entirety of it, I would have the most stone-faced, emotionless look ever. I was just going through the motions. Yeah, there was some stuff I liked, like the return of the dungeons and the puzzles and with their awesome music. The only thing that really annoyed me is this mandatory minigame having to hit 100 of these throws from Pokemon. That sucked. But I just didn't react at all. I wasn't disliking anything I was doing, but I wasn't really having fun either. I was apathetic to it all. Unless the liberation missions really fascinate you, there's no reason to play this over 4 in my opinion. Maybe for the story, but it's not like it's that much better. I'm starting to get the idea even Capcom doesn't care anymore, because in the last couple games there were a lot of spelling errors and mistranslations. I ignored them at first because games from this decade just have those sometimes. But I'm starting to realize no one proofreads this shit. There are so many grammatical errors and times when characters would say dialogue meant for other characters. This happened a lot in 4 and 5. And I think even fans started to care less as well, as 5 sold okay, but it wasn't anything crazy, definitely nowhere near as much as when the series was in its heyday. And me, along with fans and critics, all had the same complaint. It's just Mega Man again. Which again, just seems to be the fate of any Mega Man series, besides Legends I guess, but that got fucked over in an entirely different way. Let's go into Mega Man Battle Network 6 and hope Capcom ended this with a bang. Okay, so first off, what are these names? Cybeast, Falzar? and Cybeast Gregar. Is that Scottish? Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't like these names. They sound like shitty Yu-Gi-Oh cards to me. I picked Cybeast Gregar because that won the coin flip. Now, I'll just get it out of the way. The story of this game is good and does give a proper finale to the characters in the series. At least the last half. Despite it being the finale of the series, I feel it should be bigger and better than it is. There was a major difference at the beginning, with the game starting with Land moving to a new city, leaving ACDC Town to the not as rock and roll Cyber City. Of course, when he moves there, he uncovers a new plot by World 3, They're Back, led by this bitch again. Also, seemingly switching sides from good to evil is Beryl and the Colonel from the last game, which, if you did play 5, I hope you played the Colonel version, because otherwise you'd be confused as fuck as who these two are. There are some new characters like Mick, the new rival character for Land, who I don't like. He's one of those acts like a dick, but is actually a misguided kid, so his dickery is charming. I hate those. There's Tab, a kid that runs the chip shop. He's as useless as the key he's named after. The interesting one is Iris, obviously based on the Mega Man X character, which if you know what happens to her in those games,
What am I fighting for?
I'm sure she'll be fine. Although honestly, my favorite characters in this game were all the evil Navi operators of World 3, who in past games would just show up and after getting beaten, they would become very irrelevant and just disappear sometimes. Here they actually have some personality and stick around for the rest of the game after you beat them, trying to betray Wily and take over the world themselves. They do get played up as being more bumbling and not very threatening as it goes on, but at least these guys, out of all the other villains, realized, hey, Land's a kid, we're a bunch of adults, and actually tortured him and we're just gonna beat the fuck out of him at one point, making them smarter than every other bad guy in the series. They even gave Beryl and Wily some kind of development and backstory together. But again, the shit part is this all happens near the end of the game, and it is good. I think the story is on par, if not better than the one in 3. I just wish that, considering this is the last game, that they kind of took more risks and broke away from the usual formula to kind of deliver something more memorable, considering it's the last one in the series, you know, go out with a really big bang. Now actually, I was curious and I did look it up, and it turns out the devs didn't really know this was going to be the last game until apparently midway through making this one. So that does make more sense how it seems like a lot of all this important stuff is crammed at the last part. I just wish they had more time. But let's be real here, Capcom. There is no excuse for you having an entire scenario that takes place in a courtroom. You fight a guy named Judgment, and you don't have a single Ace Attorney reference in the entire thing. Like, come on, it's another franchise you have on the same console. You don't name a character Phoenix or something, or throw in some dialogue about burgers or whatever. Like, come on, it was right there. It was like, the layup was right there. It set it up for you by itself. I'm not mad. I'm just extremely disappointed. So, where do these legendary Pokemon fit in? Well, they're Cybeasts, as they're called. The bird being Falzar, and the lion who looks really familiar is the one in my version, Gregar. My always plan is to use these new devices introduced in this game called copybots to bring them to the real world. Copybots are these robots that let Navis come into the real world, which seems like a terrible idea considering all the cyber terrorism in this world. Speaking of which, he's going to use them to bring the Cybeast into the real world so he can, well, you know. Problem is, one of them, depending on which version you get, is absorbed by Mega Man, which, like the Dark Chip from 4, start fucking with him mentally and making him go berserk sometimes. More importantly, it gives us a new form, allowing Mega Man to beast out, which is kind of overpowered. It makes your Buster into this machine gun, which is ridiculous, and turns auto-aim on for your chips, so you almost never miss. And this can be activated at any time with a press of a button. Another thing I liked were the new cross system. This is similar to the Double Soul from 4 and 5, but way better. It's still fusing with the Navi and getting its element and charged Buster attack, but unlike the last game, you don't need to sacrifice a chip, so you don't have to include some chip you don't want, throwing off your deck build or anything. They can just be selected from a list. Awesome, love it. Because of this, I use these forms all the time for enemies, boss battles. I busted them out constantly. It was really fun. The shitty thing is you do have to do some mini mission or mini game with the Navi you fuse with before getting it. Didn't really like any of those, but thankfully after the first form you get, the rest are all completely optional. You don't need to do them to complete the game, which I was surprised about, and since I like the mechanic anyway, I went out of my way to get them all, and they did all prove useful to me at some point. You even get to actually use that Navi in the net after getting their form if you want to change a pace for Mega Man, and unlike 5, they don't completely suck here. Every other gameplay aspect is the same, of course, but if you played up until 6, you'd probably like it anyway, so who cares. Now, this game did have literal chip walls, but thankfully there were very few, and the chips they asked for were common. If there was any backtracking, well, I didn't notice it. I think I was just having too much fun with this game. Actually, I had a lot of fun with this. This was actually the first Mega Man Battle Network game I didn't want to stop playing. Everything worked here for me. The story was pretty good, the gameplay was solid, the music was banging, the dungeons were pretty fun. I found a lot of this game to be fun and charming. Yeah, I think I can say without hesitation, Mega Man Battle Network 6 is my personal favorite one out of the franchise. I think the team did a good job making this the one to go out on. Well, Spoilers, I guess. The series ends with Colonel and Iris, revealed to be his little sister, sacrificing themselves to save Mega Man from the Cybeast infusion. Sometime after this, Lan and his friend graduate from elementary school and enter junior high. Except for Chad, he skipped a bunch of grades and is going to university. Told you he was a nerd. Using one of the copy bots, Mega Man is even able to interact with people in the real world, which was really awesome. I loved that. Then we even get a Where Are They Now segment where Lan narrates what happened to everyone 20 years later. The only shitty part is there's no ending illustrations or anything, it's just text. Come on, what the fuck? I don't want to have to use my imagination for this. I can't get a thanks for playing with all the characters grown up with their kids. I want closure. Post-game will also kind of disappoint you. I mean, it's another fight with Bast Mouth, of course, and a supercharged version of Proto Man. That's kind of neat. But it's ultimately pretty short if you're playing the English version, and there's a reason for that. Remember that Boktai series? Well, if you play the Japanese version of 6, you'll see an entirely different post-game with bosses and dungeons based on that series. Which I think really sucks, no pun intended. I get why they did it, but also, why go out of your way to delete all this content that you already made? Just to get rid of a reference to a game that didn't sell well? You didn't get rid of the other references to it. But yeah, that's it. Mega Man Battle Network is done. The series is over. And of course, like I said, I still consider 6 to be my personal favorite. Taking aside everything I've complained about, the backtracking, the chip walls, the shit stories sometimes, I wouldn't be surprised if anyone said that any of these games were their favorite. While they have their issues, I would not call any single one of these games bad. They're all good games. Except one, if you think that's your favorite, then you're wrong. If you want the official tier list from worst to best, it's 4, 1, 2, 5, 3, 6. But yes, Battle Network is over, but it's not entirely forgotten. As some of you may know, maybe it's already happened as you're watching this video, Capcom is releasing the Battle Network Collection, releasing all of the games, hopefully as originally intended, and hopefully with all the content. At the time I'm recording this, there's not really much been said about it, but if you are interested in the series through this video, then maybe recommend checking them out. At least maybe look at some reviews first to make sure they're actually good ports. While Mega Man Battle Network did have a proper ending, which most Mega Man games, and hell, even most games in general, don't get, Capcom wasn't done with RPG Mega Mans quite yet. As you can even see in 6, they had their sights set on the brand new Nintendo DS console, and were willing to bring Mega Man into the next generation. Obviously, I'm going to be taking a break as I've had my fill of Mega Man RPGs for a while. When I do decide to come back, we will be ending this look at all the Mega Man games with the finale, taking a look at the trilogy of games released for the Nintendo DS, Mega Man Star Force. I'll see you then, and remember, it's better to be jacked in than jacked off.